What is going on, people, and welcome back to episode 4 of Real Time with Dan. And today we've got plenty to get through. We have got story to read, news to spill, and all that jazz. And fair to say there is a lot to get through today. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump straight into the first one. And I know that didn't sound very good. Anyways, that aside. So before I jump into any stories that are going on in the world or in the UK, I'd first like to just bring you a bit of a statistic. So this was mentioned on Ryan's channel, and I may have to play the clip, but I won't show it on here, but I may play the clip. So he said in his video that 90% of us are currently following the lockdown guidelines, yeah? So 90% of all British people are following the guidelines correctly. So population of about 60 million people, that's like 54 million of us actually listening to Boris. So that means 6 million people are still not. Now, I find that staggering. Like, come on. Like, 6 million people. And I mean, the fact is, the stories here just go ahead and prove it. It makes no sense. We've been told that we've got to stay indoors for our own benefit, to avoid risking, like, those who are actually the most vulnerable, as well as ourselves. I mean, you could secretly be carrying it without you even knowing it, and you could pass it on to someone who is actually vulnerable, and they could be put at massive risk. So you see where I'm coming from. But anyway, that's cleared that one up. But anyway, apart from all that, like, that was from Ryan's most recent video, and it's from a new series of his. He's starting I suppose, like an isolation vlog series, if you like. It's mostly a sit-down video series, but it is, I'd say, like, it's actually a good idea. Basically, he's making it sort of like a video diary of his progress throughout all of this. Now, if you have got a camera at home and you want to sort of see how you develop, I think this is actually a good idea. I actually considered doing this myself, but because I actually live with someone and because they're not really keen to get on camera, I think probably not a good idea for me. But for him, I think that's brilliant. I definitely commend him for that. So keep it up, Ryan. I do hope that you're doing all right. I would never want to see. I wouldn't want to know you were doing terribly, because I know it's actually affecting me just as much as everyone else. Like, even I'm beginning to go insane. Like, when I'm indoors and I get bored, the first thing I think about is chocolate, and chocolate is becoming so rare. It's almost becoming as rare as platinum. I honestly cannot find chocolate anywhere. The only chocolates I can find are, like, I can only find Bounties now, and Bounties are not my favourites. And I know there'll be Bounty lovers out there that are just going to absolutely hate me now, but hell, I've got a preference, you've got one as well, so let's just leave it at that, shall we? Right, and anyway, so let's go ahead and just jump straight into the story, shall we? So, now, I'm going to just paint the scene for you. If you've ever heard the story of a policeman who had to interrupt a couple's barbecue on a beach by dousing their barbecue in water, well, this is actually the story right here. If I go ahead and show you, I'll let the screen fade to it. So the actual story reads: couple moan after police break up their barbecue on Sussex beach. And then if I scroll down a bit, so we'll move this. And here's the video. I'll show you the video real quick.
Again, I'm educating you. You just told me. Thank you for educating me. He's a teacher, a part-time teacher as well now.
The sooner you move away from us, the better day you'll probably have.
Yeah.
Just go and enjoy yourself somewhere else. Just not on the beach.
Just ruined their freaking day.
Yes, because they're telling everybody, look how empty the beach is.
I do wonder why on earth they thought that was a good idea. It's not. Like, I know it's only 2 of them, and I mean, hell, if they're part of the same household, then I suppose. But again, note this. Like, I'm sure they drove to get there, but if they didn't, I suppose, like, the thing is, even if they didn't drive there, if they just walked out from the house that was just on the seaside, I think it's not a good idea, because that's just going to make other people assume that they can go there. Like, that's basically a ruse to get people out of the house. Like, they'll go, oh, so they're doing it? Why don't we just go? It'll be easy. It won't be too much of a hassle. It'll only be another couple of people. Well, actually, that could then cause an even bigger ruse that then gets everyone else out of the house. And heck, I bet the armed forces will have to come around and start arresting people at this rate. And saying that, they actually said that they will start to enforce roadblocks, which, it's unbelievable. Yeah, so this is what the article says. The pair who were sunbathing amidst the backdrop of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic then said that the police had ruined their day when they showed up to tell them to go home. So it should go without saying that this is completely against the current advice, which is to stay home and only go out for essential travel, for food and medicine, and one form of exercise per day. That's actually a very good way of summing it up. That's essentially what's happened. It is completely against the current advice, and it is not exercise, that's leisure. Leisure indoors or in your back garden is absolutely fine. You know, with members of your household, that is completely and utterly fine. Going to the beach, on the other hand, or a public park, absolute no, just a complete no. What they should do is put a sign there saying, please avoid the beaches, because otherwise you're gonna make other people assume that they can go outside towards, like, to go to the beach. It's just not on. I mean, I've even seen another article, or actually pictures, of benches in public parks being taped off because they're not allowing people to sit down on them. And it goes without saying that in reality they ought to basically just simply tape up every single entrance and every single exit. Just make the area inaccessible for people. Put a roadblock there. Put anything there. It does go without saying that some people just do not understand how dangerous this whole situation is. Even if you don't have any symptoms, you could be a carrier, as I've said 1,000 times, and you could spread it to someone who is vulnerable. Please heed my warning. It can happen. It can happen. Either I could be a carrier and I don't know it. That's why I'm not going anywhere closer than 2 meters for anyone. But again, I could probably say the same to about 1,000 people. I could say, you're not 2 meters apart, and I mean, heck, it does get on my nerves. It really does. I hope people can understand where I'm coming from with this. But anyway, but apart from that, that's pretty much that one. But before I move on to the next one, I would like to just, I'd like to remind you all that we now know that I think we all know that Boris Johnson is now out of the intensive care unit and is actually now having occasional walks around the hospital. So that's definitely good news. That's saying that he's making a very good recovery, and carry on, Boris. You soldier on. You do what you need to do. Take the time you need just to get better. And we always have to thank the NHS because they're doing such an amazing job. And again, this week it was that time to applaud them about 2 days ago, because it's Saturday now, and saying that it's actually Easter tomorrow, so happy Easter, everyone. And apart from that, again, we can't fault the NHS or any of the healthcare assistants or anyone of that matter. We can't fault them. We have to applaud them. We have to, tell them they're doing a fantastic job, keep them going, and, it's only fair. And I mean, I've seen news articles of, I think it was 2 healthcare assistants that were queuing outside of a Sainsbury's, and then they were let forward by a bunch of the crowd, but then the customer assistant said, no, you got to go to the back. That's not allowed. Okay. It doesn't matter. They're healthcare assistants, or they're NHS workers, and they deserve to go in and get what they need, because they've probably been working, some workers I've heard have been working an average of 65 hours a week, which is insane. I couldn't work that for my life. Never. It just makes no sense. I mean, that is such solid devotion. I think they don't just deserve a medal. They don't deserve even a trophy. They deserve the world for that. I can't fault them. It just can't be done. So, Anyway, moving on. So I sort of went a bit off topic there. Right, so this story here from this article reads, police and military boats will patrol the south coast beaches and use megaphones to shout at Covidiots, I like that word, over the Easter weekend amid fears sweltering 80-degree Fahrenheit temperatures could tempt Britons to break lockdown procedure. And police forces across the UK have been out today reprimanding sunbathers for being outside during lockdown. On beaches and parks nationwide, many were still defying social distancing rules put in place by the government. So that pretty much simply paints that picture even further. That's simply the piece de resistance. And I have to say, again, just people understand the police are just doing their job to keep us indoors. And, how can we say that this is a bad idea? Like, this is simply they're just assuring us that they're doing everything in their power to protect us. They're not doing it to annoy us. You're just going out and annoying yourselves as a result because you're just being reminded and you don't like it. That's the thing. That's just it. Like, we can't fault the police for doing what they're doing. And I know there are some police that may have said one or two things, but it's not like as if they're going out their way and like pushing people over, or it's not like they're actually assaulting anyone. They're just simply coming over and saying, look, we are here just to tell you to please move away, or or leave, go home, stay indoors. That's all they really mean to say. But if you argue with them, you're just making their job harder. Take their advice and just go, rather than just causing a fight, because that's not the thing. It's not the right way. It's not the reasonable action to take with the police. It's just not. I mean, what would you do if he was an armed guard? Anyway, so that's pretty much all I have to say about, incidences on the beach and in public places. But now this one, if you thought those last two articles were, the pinnacle of this whole epidemic and, sort of how stupid the population is. Now, it doesn't go to say that some owners of or some managers of some places can also be complete idiots. But this one, seriously, this one takes the cake as the daftest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. So this is a manager of a food supplier company. Right here it says, manager at major UK food supplier says staff who stay at home may be sacked. And I read that all the way through several times, and I've never read such rubbish in my whole life. Staff who stay at home may be sacked. Well, no, it should, I think what maybe it came out as maybe, but it should have said won't be sacked is really what that should say. But I mean, that's what he said, so. And here's the other quote. The chief threatens to sack staff who stay at home during the coronavirus lockdown. So, the actual article reads, a boss at one of the largest suppliers of fresh food to UK supermarkets threatened to sack staff who stayed at home during the COVID-19 pandemic, a move that may have pressured vulnerable workers into shifts at a factory where social distancing has not been observed. And I read that again several times, and I still wonder, does he know what's going on in the world? Because I think he's daft as anything. So workers at a North London plant run by the Food Group, which supplies the likes of Tesco, Sainsbury's, M&S and Waitrose, were told they would be first in line for future redundancies if they missed work when they were not sick, even though some may have underlying health conditions or family members displaying symptoms. I seriously can't be on board with that one. That's an instant no. Because the thing is, even if you haven't got it, or even if you are just if you're caring for someone, that's a perfectly fine reason. So why has he got a problem with that? That's disgusting. So he even actually down here he also said, while he repeatedly told workers to stay at home if they were unwell or displaying symptoms, he says if we look at the 45% of people who are off sick at the moment, maybe, and I will actually emphasize maybe 5% of those have coronavirus. The other 40% of people just don't want to come. Now, what evidence do you have for that one, can I ask? Because I don't think that's even remotely true. I don't think, no, it's not because 40% of people don't want to come. They do want to work, or well, some may not want to work, but you know, it's probably because they're trying to care for people that are vulnerable or who are actually sick. That's the thing. So, yes, so here we go. But the thing was, and then a spokesperson or spokesman who actually has been working, who read into this, says, we take this very seriously and are investigating the matter. We apologise to our staff for any miscommunication or worry caused. The manager in question has been given leave. No, that's the wrong word. Not leave. Should be fired. That guy does not deserve to work there if he's going to start threatening his colleagues to say, oh, you shouldn't be off work, you should be working, you haven't got coronavirus, otherwise you're fired. So, given leave and prior to his return to work, he will undertake further training, more like undertake a full course, not further training, around his role and responsibilities and the high standards we expect of a manager. Now look, if you want to really discipline him properly, you should have a meeting with him and tell him that he's a complete moron. That's a stupid thing to say. I would never, ever in a million years, want a manager who talked to me like that. I'd leave immediately or file a report with the police and get him sacked. Or I'd relieve him of his command. Because that is the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. If he actually understood, the big crisis, like the full picture, I reckon that would never have had to be said, and that would have saved a lot of people getting absolutely so worried, which at a time like this, everyone will be. We're all frightened for our lives. Some people more than others. But that's the stupidest thing I've read. I mean, apart from when that man shoved his wife in the boot, that one, oh my God. I think these two are equally about as stupid as each other. Stupid. But yes, now, I do also have some information regarding the UK lockdown. Now I don't actually know... Now, I don't know exactly if this is true, but according to another news article, which I don't believe is actually around, I had a look at this the other day, and it said about the UK and the lockdown. It said that... It basically said that by the 27th of April, most small businesses with less than 50 employees may reopen. So that's about 2 weeks away. So that's definitely a start. And then I believe it's early May. I think they said they're going to relieve a couple of the guidelines, which I think it was the exercise and the shopping. So you can now basically go out for non-essentials, which would definitely be a big step, because to be fair, that's not saying you still can't be 2 meters away. That's still going by. So that's okay in a way. And as long as people go by those guidelines, it's nothing we can't do. But anyway, but apart from that, and then they said that there's a potential that by about, I think they said about June or about like early to mid-June, we may see these being completely, abolished or, in essence, suppressed or relaxed. So, if that's the way it's going to be, who knows? I mean, it already says, pubs, bars and restaurants could be open by the 27th of April, which is, that's definitely something to keep in mind. But again, even that, that would be all right for some people, not for me, but... what's it about me? It's not about me in the slightest. So, anyways, I thought I'd go ahead and just go into a few little... I wanted to do a bit of tech talk for a bit, because in the first episode, I mentioned a microphone, this one here, the the Synco mic D2. Now, this microphone is, of course, as I said in the video, it's a shotgun mic. It is a competitor to the Sennheiser 416, the Rode NTG3, and various others like the Shep CMET or whatever. Now, of course, then I mentioned that there was another one which is made by the same company, which is the Synco mic D1, which is right here. So the Synco mic D1 is essentially kind of, I suppose the brother to the D2, in the sense that it has a high-pass filter, it has a battery slot so you can power it without needing the phantom power. In addition to that, you can even plug this into your DSLR or mirrorless camera that does not have an XLR input, but instead has a 3.5mm jack. At the same time, it also comes with, it comes with the conventional XLR cable, so you say, well, actually, that's not a bad idea. But I've spotted a couple of really alarming figures about this. Now, in reality, this was actually compared to the NTG3 by Rode, and that's actually a solid microphone. I've heard it, and it sounds fantastic. This mic, compared to that, there's no comparison. The Rode NTG3, as always, will always sound better. It just will. And here's why. Because the NTG3 is only powered, it's the same as the D2. I say the D2 versus the NTG3 is a more fair comparison because the self-noise is the same. The self-noise of the D1 is so high, if we actually come down, and the reason I can tell this is if we come down to, the maximum SPL is 130 decibels. So that means the loudest thing it can record, or the loudest sound source, can be 130 decibels and it will still record it fine. But the usable dynamic range, so in essence the sound that's actually usable, is 106. But that's when you so essentially to get the dynamic range, you take the max SPL and you take the self noise. So the self noise, and you take that away from the max SPL and you get the dynamic range. So that means this thing has got 24 decibels of self-noise when you're phantom powering it. Now that's just by phantom power, so that's already quite bad. Like that's quite a high self-noise for something like a shotgun mic. A shotgun mic generally has about maybe 13 or 12. Like that's pretty reasonable for a shotgun mic. If it was any lower than that, I think you'd pay thousands for it. So, and the other one, but then it gets worse. If you then decide to use the internal battery, it goes down to 91. 91. Now, so that means it gets 15 decibels more self-noise. So instead of it being 20, it'll be 39 decibels of self-noise, which is really bad. I have to say, that's absolutely terrible. So you're pretty much going to hear a lot of you'll hear an awful lot of that hiss. So not a good idea. Now, in reality though, if you compare it to something like a Rode NTG2, which is the one before the NTG3, that one's pretty much the exact same as this, except the high pass filter on the NTG2 is down to 80 Hz. This one is down to 180 Hz. Now, the point of a high pass filter is to accommodate for low end response. So if you've got things like wind that's buffeting the mic and causing that horrid that's basically wind noise that is down below 150 hertz. So that's like low end rumble. A high pass filter of 180 hertz is a little bit extreme, I think. It does mean that you're going to be losing some bassiness in your voice, so you may find it changes the tone quite dramatically, but I think just throw on a dead cat and you'll be fine. But if you need to engage it, I'd only use it in specific circumstances, like if the wind is really getting up high. But if I have a look at the Rode NTG2 here, so it's pretty much the exact same. It has a high pass filter of 80 Hz, which is similar to the original Video Mic Pro, which I had actually. And in reality, it didn't really change the tone too much. It did sort of take a little bit of that low end out there, but it still it was still relatively well detailed, so I wasn't really too mad at that, to be fair. So this has a max SPL of 131 and a self noise of 18 dBA. So that's actually already way better. So the Synco Mic D1 had 24, and so but the thing is that the only thing is I would like to know is that with both. That's the one thing I'd like to say. Is that self noise the same around all of it? Like, is that the same self noise when you're powering it via phantom power and via battery? Like, so that's the one thing I'd probably be wondering, but I suppose we'll have to wait and I mean, I'd probably say if someone has got those two mics, maybe make a video, because the Rode NTG3 versus the Synco Mic D1, slightly unfair comparison, but I mean, heck, if someone's got the Synco Mic D2, which I do, but has also got an NTG3, they should make a video and maybe just have a little bit of a play around and see what they can achieve with it, because they may find that one works better than the other. I mean, heck, like the Synco Mic D2 does work. It definitely has got, So as I was saying, the Synco Mic D2 is a very reasonable mic, especially for the price. This has got only 13 dBA of self-noise, which is actually reasonable for a shotgun microphone. It's very comparable to the Rode NTG3 and the Sennheiser 416, which is over $1,000. Like, I see no reason not to buy the Synco Mic D2. Like, I personally don't. Now, I know there was that controversy, but again, that did not happen to me. I never did get paid to say anything, but in my honest opinion, I do like it. It's a fantastic mic, and you get a foam windscreen, which I will admit is a bit different to most foam windscreens. It's more like a velvet sort of feel, and it definitely has got some nice, it doesn't roll off too many of those high frequencies. It still sounds relatively clear. And maybe at some point I might even have to replace this mic and just use this instead for a while. Who knows? I mean, I tried that, but I did notice that noise floor did pick up a little bit, because this mic has got a slightly lower self noise than even this, because this is a dynamic, this is a condenser. And I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon, because I'm sure most people will know the difference between a condenser and a dynamic. But yeah, so pretty much that's more or less everything I've got today. But anyway, if you guys have enjoyed this episode of Real Time with Dan, make sure you do go ahead and smash the like button down below. Make sure you subscribe and make sure you press the bell icon so you will not be missing any future videos. Now, in terms of upload schedules, again, I know I was meant to film this 2 days ago, but again, I sometimes need to gather my sources from other places. So, as I say in every video, if you've got anything to say, like any stories or any happenings that you know of, or something funny to say, or anything along those lines, like put it down below in the comments. And as I say, I've already mentioned, I've read a couple from the last. I did do one from the last episode. But if you want to be mentioned, then go ahead and say that. If you don't, then just clarify that, and I'll keep you anonymous. And if you don't want to do it on my YouTube comments, stick it in my email. You can just simply write to me at dan.b.bryan@hotmail.com. I'll be leaving a link to that down below in the description anyway. But anyway, I want to say thank you guys for watching another episode of Real Time with Dan, and I shall see you all in the next one. Take great care, and I'll see you next time.